My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Craft Compliance, Direct-to-Consumer Sales and Fulfillment, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Virginia SBDC Craft Beverage Assistance Program Manager, Chris Van Orden.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this conversation about direct-to-consumer strategies for the craft beverage industry. As Sheila said, my name is Chris Van Orden. I'm manager of the Craft Beverage Assistance Program at the Virginia SBDC at George Mason University. The CBA program is designed to provide industry-specific assistance to Virginia's craft beverage sector. So as always, today's program will be a free-flowing discussion on what breweries, wineries, cideries, and distilleries need to work through before embarking on direct-to-consumer sales. You can enter any questions that you might have in the Q&A function, not the chat, Q&A function, please. And we'll do our best to answer them either during or after the end of the webinar. So I am excited to welcome back Kevin Anderson, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at alcoholconsulting.com. And Executive Director of the Loudoun County Brewers Association. As a former Virginia ABC special agent, Kevin spent years on the lookout for regulatory violations, and today he works with alcohol producers of all sorts across Virginia and the country on developing thoughtful compliance strategies. So today, I'll be asking Kevin to share some information on how producers can build a successful and compliant DTC, direct-to-consumer program. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Yeah, it's always appreciated.
These are always fun.
Yeah, this is it's a lot of learning. I know that everyone appreciates hearing it from someone who knows what they're doing. So today we have a very specific topic, direct to consumer. For those in attendance today who aren't yet selling direct to consumer, can you just start out by sharing a bit just a background, both what the term means and how the channel has evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, definitely. So what's kind of happened is this is a really great conversation for this time of year, for one, is because direct to consumer sales, which really means online marketing, e-commerce sales, people going through your social media channels, your website, and purchasing online and you shipping to them. But this time of year, they explode. This is the biggest time of year for direct to consumer sales, where you can go online and purchase and it shows up at your door. But DTC, or direct to consumer, it refers to the process where producers such as wineries, breweries, distilleries, cideries sell their products directly to consumers via e-commerce channels. Essentially, you're bypassing the wholesalers, the distributors, and the retailers being able to get directly to your customer that's not physically in your brick and mortar business. So this approach kind of allows for a more personalized connection with your customer, and you have higher profit margins. As most of us know, that if you ever sell in wholesale, you're losing a lot of money. So being able to get that tasting or tap room price, but through an online sale, could be a game changer if done correctly. Retailers in some states also harness the power of DTC. So it could be a liquor store or wine and beer shop sometimes can also ship. So you also have the rise in e-commerce platforms over the years. Social media marketing is exploding, and it's making it much easier for the craft beverage producers to reach a wider audience. So what's happening is consumers are increasingly, they want something more authentic, something local and unique and not mass produced, in which your winery, brewery, distillery can be positioned to sell to them directly instead of them having to go to the shelf and find what they want. They can go to your website and you ship directly to them, which, you know, really could be a no-brainer for people. But that's why we're here today, because there is a complex regulatory scheme with all of this. While the regulatory scheme remains extremely complex, it's changing rapidly in a usually a good way for better, make it easier, but it also varies significantly by state. And that's where the problem lies. One state could have a completely different regulation than the other and process to get licensed. A lot of this has really been changing in light of the pandemic when brick and mortar was shut down across the United States. So, really, a lot of these laws and regulations started evolving quicker for DTC because of the pandemic. And a lot of them have stayed into place, which is great. It's key, though, for producers, one, to enter who want to enter the market and expand to the space to understand a few things. One is your target market, and you need to leverage digital tools effectively. Meaning, if you're not online, you're not going to make sales, and navigate all the regulatory requirements properly. So it's about building a strategy that kind of combines everything: compliance, consumer engagement, and marketing in a way that resonates with your consumer.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space, touching on a lot of issues that maybe companies may not be skilled up in. I mean, e-commerce, the SBDC has many webinars just on e-commerce alone. And if you're not doing DTC yet, that's not something, maybe you're doing some online marketing, but with a very different goal. If you're just going through traditional channels. So
Yeah.
something to learn.
And for everyone who's watching, one thing you could do is just go on Google or go on a search engine and just type in "buy beer online," "buy liquor online," and just see what pops up. That is your competition in the area that you're located in. So if you want to buy something, see what everyone else is doing. Look at all those ads and see what follows you now on Facebook. You want to look something up on Facebook, those ads follow you to buy that new distilled spirit product. So, all these things that you can do yourself and look and see what's going on in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and we'll dive into the state by state stuff. I think everybody in the industry knows, or hopefully hasn't learned
Yeah.
the hard way about how varied it can be. But this is definitely another area where you have to be very mindful. So
Mhm.
for those starting out, right? Let's say if we have anybody who isn't yet engaging in direct to consumer sales, or has only done it piecemeal, like when you're working with a company on it might be getting into the space, what do you like to see in place? When does it make sense for them to start pursuing DTC sales, as a channel?
Yeah, it's really all the above. There's really not a one size fits all answer to this because every business and everyone's different. I see up and coming manufacturers who are beginning their DTC strategy even before they have their winery, brewery, distillery license. And I have other clients who've been in the business for years and they don't want anything to do with direct to consumer. So it really depends on a bunch of factors. One is where you're located, what your regulations are, but what's right for you and your business. I would say that one is understanding your audience is crucial. I've seen so many businesses start DTC just to throw it out there and see what happens, and no one's buying because they didn't do their planning properly. If your craft beverage possesses a unique quality or compelling story, that's another easy way to get your product out direct to consumer. Or start creating a new story within your winery, brewery, distillery with new products to start launching. But one of the biggest things to consider would be compliance and regulatory management. This is basically where the sales landscape is so complex with varied state regulations. Before diving in and saying we want to sell our product across the nation, really have a plan and get a grasp of all of the regulations in every state that you want to sell into. Even some states are county by county, whether it's a dry county and you're not supposed to sell into those counties. You need to obtain all the necessary permits and understand shipping restrictions. Another thing is your distribution and logistics capabilities also plays a role. You're going to need to be able to manage everything as well, from order fulfillment to packaging and shipping efficiently. This is going to ensure that your direct to consumer operation has the chance to run smoothly. There's nothing worse than someone placing an order and you forgetting about it. So having a plan in place moving forward, and don't wait to the last minute and launch and realize that we need to do this. Diving into the direct to consumer market can also require a significant upfront investment. So that's something to be aware of and to look into. You're going to have new e-commerce platforms, marketing strategies. Licensing can be expensive as well, and inventory management if you don't already have something that can help with that. So I actually had a question come up yesterday evening, which I thought would be perfect for today's discussion.
Mhm.
And this business was actually currently licensed as a brewery, winery, distillery. And they said, Kevin, we get asked a lot about whether people can buy our products and have it delivered to other states. We are looking to potentially set up where people can go to our website and purchase our products that we send via FedEx or UPS. Are we good to go on all states, or will we need to will we need licenses besides Virginia? So that is a perfect example where starting the very beginning is you might have a great channel for social media, but now it's time to start really thinking about how could we get into each state properly. And now it's really takes research, or bringing people on your team that knows about the market. So direct to consumer sales is a large undertaking, especially if you handle everything in house. There are opportunities to kind of outsource direct to consumer sales, which I'll get into later. But having a comprehensive plan is really key.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great. You said a lot in there that I wanted to latch onto. Just the logistical elements. This is, you're really speaking my language of, okay, you make these sales, then what? There's it's a great thing, but you don't want, if you're don't have a system in place, you're going to wind up making sales and say, oh no, this is a problem. Maybe my system wasn't set up and I made a sale to a region I'm not licensed in, or I don't have a mechanism for sending this, or I didn't price myself properly and now I'm losing money on every time because of the shipping costs and the blah blah blah. Right? I didn't have the shipping costs on time, whatever it might be. I think that legwork and putting in a really good foundation is important. And you mentioned something that kind of resonated with last month's webinar that we did on storytelling. This is from the marketing angle of, right, compelling visual imagery, storytelling for your brand. If anybody wants to go back and watch it, you can check it out on the program page. Daniel James of Herd Ventures talked about this. And right, just selling in a different way, you're going to need different marketing assets, making sure you're investing in that. So you can't just put it up online and expect it to move. This is an investment that is going to require, thinking a little bit differently about how you convince customers to try your product. You're no longer selling in-house where you give people a sample, you give them the hospitality angle. Well, you're
Yeah.
competing against much bigger players with much bigger marketing budgets and, ad placements and all that. So lots of foundation to lay before
Yeah.
you.
And just a good example of a quick good storyteller. Go to your local, wine and beer shop and find 19 Crimes Wine and download their app so you can actually see their labels come to life. Everyone's trying something new, whether it's in retail, in wholesale, or even direct to consumer, but it's adding that additional wow factor for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's lots of approaches. Just putting it up online. You may see some incidental sales, or your most devoted fans may do that, but you're trying to grow your audience, right?
Everybody wants to go viral though.
Yeah. It's getting people to move from one channel to another. Okay, fine, especially if it's higher margin, but you're trying to grow your audience through online sales. There's a lot that it takes to get there. So when you're working with an alcohol producer, what would you suggest that they start doing when they're building out their programs? Is it something that you suggest they take on themselves? Would you recommend that they look to some of the platforms that are out there to kind of ease the burden for them?
Yeah, all the above. Just me personally, the first thing is I don't think I would recommend trying to go nationally yourself, and you'll see why after this whole conversation is over. But really, as someone who's in the compliance aspect of this field, really it is the compliance research that initially the producers need to look at. And the reason is some of these out of state licenses can take months to obtain, and they have a lot of complex ongoing requirements. They're expensive, and essentially the juice might not be worth the squeeze. But really, it's researching where you want to be. So if you are a Virginia producer and you want to get into a certain state, do your research about that state, because you can tailor your online marketing to geolocate within certain geographical areas. You don't have to market to the country. You could market to Washington, D.C., New York, Pennsylvania, or a state that allows you to sell into. So really it's doing your research first. And this is, if you're especially going to be doing it yourself. You can target other states later and you can open up slowly if you're going to do this yourself. But really having that online presence, having that strong social media, digital marketing connection is going to be key, because you can spend tens of thousands of dollars yourself getting permitted and licensed across the country. And that's not going to help if you don't have an online presence and you're not effectively engaging your customers. Customers that are located near your business, they can come and usually buy from you, but you're trying to leverage those people that can't get into your business. um, so digital marketing is really something to get into. There's a lot of free training about it, which all helps. And also financial implications. It can be very expensive as an investment to obtain permits and licensing and your continuous upkeep of these requirements. So, it might not be worth selling into the state of California if you're only shipping 1 or 2 cases a month, because the licensing fees alone wouldn't cover that. And those are things that your research would uncover. And luckily, we've done that, a lot of this research for our clients. So we have a lot of this. So if you want to get a wine product in a certain state, we know exactly the steps you need to do. But as usual, I won't always tell someone, yeah, let's go to that step, because there's other options for you to get into the DTC market without taking all of that risk yourself. And a few of those are, one is there's a platform called Vino Shipper. I have not used it. I know a lot of people that do. I'm not, partnering with them or anything, but Vino Shipper's popular with wineries, as it kind of is a one-stop shop to help your business. It has compliance support, state by state regulations, offers tools for, shipping management, taxes, age verification, and more. They're very wine specific, but it is something that a lot of wineries around the country use to get their product DTC. Obviously, you're going to take less profit because you're going through other people's software and other third parties, but it takes that regulatory burden sometimes off you if you don't have to hold the license in certain states. Another option for DTC is not just shipping, but you also have direct-to-consumer delivery options, which can get across the country as well. You have things like Drizzly. They operate an online app, a marketplace where consumers are connected with local wine and beer and liquor stores, and even wineries, breweries, and distilleries in some states. So where a customer can go online, order your product through an app, and it gets delivered. And while it's not directly e-commerce, it's a valuable channel to use and to think about. This is the same thing with Uber Eats, DoorDash, and others. There's also a newer company that I've been looking at called Liquid Rails. I think their website is like getliquidrails.com. And what they do is they connect brand owners. So it could be a winery, brewery, distillery, or just a brand per se, a winery or wine, beer, or liquor brand, with retailers across the country for more local and regionalized fulfillment. And we'll talk about in a little bit of how hard it is to legally and properly ship across the country. But if you have some other local fulfillment through other channels around the country, you can get your products out to more states when not having to direct to consumer ship. So it's an interesting concept that they've done, which I would look into if this is something that you're looking to move forward with, is direct to consumer. And finally, really would be Shopify and those type of websites. So Shopify, BigCommerce.com, those are e-commerce sites that you can make yourself. It's a website where you put your products on, you sell it, integrates with other shipping programs such as UPS and FedEx. You can control it yourself. It's very easy to use. You can add shipping, you can add age verification, other things. So there's a lot of different options to go direct to consumer. Not all of them require you to do it yourself. You can work with other companies that actually do things for you, and you can sometimes fall under their licensing depending on the state and the circumstance.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of variety among the options that are out there that are, beyond just running it through your own website with varying degrees of services, probably varying degrees of costs, and knowing that not every solution is going to work for both every product or every category and in every market. Making sure that you're fully aware of what's going, how each one's going to operate. It's a big difference shipping a pallet to a warehouse, let's say on the West Coast, and they fulfill from that. There's a company called Tavor that does something like that. They're essentially like fully online distributor. So maybe you're not commanding the same margins as direct to consumer sales, but if you're trying to reach the West Coast, sending small, volume shipments across the country may not be cost effective. So, right, there's all kinds of models there. And then, so that's, one kind of variable that can change so much, right? Just how full service of it, how much of the burden are you accepting yourself? How much are you paying somebody else to handle? Then, of course, we've at least so far spoken generally about alcohol categories overall. And I think as people know, and probably know only too well from their own experiences, not all alcohol categories are treated the same. So can you tell us a little bit about the differences between beer, wine, spirits, and how they work in the DC?
Yes. So wine, beer, and spirits are very different when it comes to getting into new states and the sales channels for these products. This is because of varying regulations, market dynamics, customer behavior that are associated with each of the categories. But regulations really are one of the key factors, and kind of the history of where we've gone and where we are now. So when you're talking about wine, so the direct-to-consumer wine industry is the most developed. It's been around the longest. The wine industry has been the strongest for the longest time until recently, and they have the most favorable regulatory environment across the country. So approximately 45 states allow the interstate shipping of wine directly to customers within their state in some form or fashion. And these also have established processes for compliance, reporting, and ongoing licensing and renewals. So wine is the easiest, but a lot of people aren't in the wine industry. A lot of people do beer. A lot of people do spirits. You have the new RTD spirit cocktails, which can actually be regulated differently in different states. But now we also have beer. So beer sales are more restrictive compared to wine. So if you're trying to get your beer product into the direct-to-consumer e-commerce sales and being able to ship it across the country, beer is definitely a lot more restrictive than wine. A lot of fewer states allow you to ship beer into their state. The regulations can be more complex, and this even includes direct-to-consumer shipments from retailers as well. Partly because the beer industry has historically relied on more local distribution and taproom sales. People haven't been wanting to ship a 4-pack of 16-ounce beer cans across the country where you buy it for $11.99 and the shipping is $14.99. It just hasn't been as economical, but people are now really starting it. It appears there's approximately about 9 states that allow 11 states that allow direct-to-consumer shipping of beer. And that's in kind of various different ways. Some states require you, even for wine, beer, or spirits, where you have to physically go to that out-of-state winery, brewery, distillery, place an order in person, and now they can ship it back to your house, where you can't actually go onto a website and have it shipped to you. Essentially, you visited that out-of-state facility, and now you're shipping it back to yourself. Some states, that's all they allow, and that's actually included in the 45 states and the 11 states for beer sales. Last but not least, but also the biggest growing segment, is distilled spirit DTC sales. So direct-to-consumer sales of spirits and liquor bottles. They face the tightest restrictions across the country. States have stringent rules. There are also a lot of control states where the government controls the sale of liquor, which are much harder than to ship your product into, if at all. A lot of states outright prohibit interstate shipping of spirits. This is largely due to the historical perspective and regulatory legacies concerning spirits and the control states as well. There appears to be approximately 9 states that allow DTC spirit shipments in some form or fashion. And that doesn't just include going to a website and selling. That could be physically having to go to that distillery and getting it shipped back to your house yourself. But all of this does kind of make you wonder, if you go online and do a search yourself, say buy bourbon online, how all of these online liquor store websites say they can legally ship to 37 states. Not sure, but people are doing it. So, but that kind of gives you a perspective of wine, beer, and spirits are very different from state to state.
Yeah, that's fascinating how wildly different they're treated. I mean, there's all kinds of ways, and it's interesting that certainly the legacy of wine. We're talking also about imported wine. People going on vacation and shipping product back. Maybe I think from the logistical standpoint as well, right? Even if beer is permitted to be shipped in a given state, cost effectiveness, the sort of the weight versus the value, right? There's a downward pressure on how much can you sell a 4-pack for? Maybe $20.
Yeah.
And, whereas wine goes up much higher, certainly on a per ounce basis. And then there's shelf stability. How much beer can you really buy at a time? The whole point is freshness, whereas wine, I think that just from a logistical standpoint, buying a case of wine, you're not, bringing a ticking time bomb into your home the way that I think of beer sometimes. So just, that would recommend wine over beer in sort of in the aggregate anyway. And then knowing that, well, on the regulatory side, wine is also far and away the most developed when it comes to DTC sales. But it sounds like we're starting to see a little bit of action here just based on what we've all been through over the past few years.
Yeah, and you see the most, software programs and third-party applications for the wine industry because they've been around so long, and a lot of these companies have fully done their research and all the regulations, and they've been able to incorporate that into their software product that can then help you get your products into all these states.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if a company's done some of their research, they decide, hey, this is for me. And they're not going to go with a full service operation where somebody else is going to be handling all of the regulations. What are some of the kinds of regulations that a producer is going to need to be aware of if they're going to be starting to do some DTC sales and owning at least part of the process?
Yeah, and I think we've already talked about how many possible regulations there can be, and they vary from state to state. So really, it's figuring out where you want to go first. Don't just say we want to go everywhere. You should pick various states that you want to get into and work on those first, and essentially practice and do it slowly, because one, it is very expensive as well, because most states have their own requirements for shipping, whether it's wine, beer, or spirits. You would, as a producer for most states, would need a direct shipping license of some sort. That would be the first process, which can be time consuming. It can take months. Sometimes some states require extensive documentation, just like your original licensing to produce your product. Some states require background checks and full disclosures of ownership just to get an out-of-state direct-to-consumer shipping license. An example would be one is specifically in Virginia, wineries, breweries would need to add a Virginia ABC wine or beer shipper's license to their winery or brewery license if they want to ship direct to consumers only within the state of Virginia. If you're a winery and you want to ship to somebody down the street or someone in Virginia, you would then need to get your Virginia ABC wine shipper's license. But if your winery or brewery with your your in-state Virginia shipper's license wants to ship to another state, that's where you need to start researching that state's requirements, because having a Virginia license does not allow you just to sell outside of the state yourself. And other things that you might not think about as a producer is, if you're a winery or brewery and you don't already get COLAs, so a COLA is that certificate of label approval at the federal level, that allows you to sell across state lines. So if you're a brewery within the state of Virginia and you don't have a COLA because you're not required to, and now you want to sell a certain product out of Virginia, you need to make sure that you have COLA approval for your label before you can ship it out of state. That's something that a lot of people kind of forget.
Yeah, it's a great point. If this is your first interaction in interstate sales, just because you're not working with a partner there, it might even be just a small number of incidental sales. If you're not careful, with how you set things up, you might just have people trying to make those purchases and ship it, in a state that you're not ready to, or even if you decide to pursue it, you are now going to be engaging with TTV in a more hands-on way than you ever had before.
And a lot of people don't realize that could now trigger a formula to be approved.
Yeah.
If you're selling like a hard seltzer or other products and you want to get a label approved, you might now have to get a formula approved too. So there's a lot of steps to go through to make sure that you're doing it properly. Another thing is not just alcohol licensing. Sadly, and it makes the process so much more difficult. But in addition to alcohol specific licenses, in many cases, the producer also needs to register your business in the state that you're going to get that DTC license. That could involve setting up as a foreign entity in the state that you're based. So if you're a Virginia brewer and you want to sell into South Carolina, you might have to register your LLC, your Virginia LLC or corporation in South Carolina before they can approve your alcohol license. And also, these are also renewals. Renewing your business registrations in states require usually an annual renewal and fee. You also have excise tax rates that you have to think about and reporting requirements. So once you get a DTC license for a certain state, normally this will require you to pay the wine, beer, or spirits excise tax to that state on a recurring basis, either monthly, quarterly, maybe even yearly. And this is for every state that you want to go into. Another area is not only excise tax on wine and beer, but also sales tax. Many states require you to also hold a sales and use tax or a sales tax certificate to sell into their state. So you have to collect sales tax, say from a customer in Illinois, and you also have to remit sales tax, and even at the county and city levels in some states. So that's why there are all these now software programs that help direct-to-consumer shippers ship across the country, because if you have to sell into a certain county in Illinois, you might not only be required to pay Illinois sales tax, Illinois excise tax, but also the locality sales tax of where that product ended up as well. What else? So, but also before selling into a new state, we also talked about label approvals, very important, and restrictions on packaging. So knowing what you can and cannot do when you're packaging your bottles or cans. Every state has its own type of regulation. Most of them are very similar, but this could include having to actually put on the outer packaging certain verbiage or wording, like this contains alcohol, signature of someone 21 or years older required. And that's where you would then pay UPS or pay FedEx that extra fee that they have to require a signature, and they would be the ones to usually check the identification upon delivery. Making sure that all of those things are on there. But state by state regulations are by far the biggest hurdle to really get your DTC channel up and running.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a lot, and we're not trying to scare anybody off here. We just want to make sure you're taking it seriously enough and being thoughtful about how you roll things out. And the same thing with traditional distribution. Trying to tackle the world all at once is maybe not the best strategy. Thinking very, intentionally about where do I want to go, from a, the sort of market draw side of like, where are my consumers? Where am I going to have the most success? And how onerous is the state? There's this happens in both domestic and international contexts. You say, hey, nobody's going after this market. Maybe I could go in there, set things up. Well, maybe there's a reason that people are deciding not to sell them. There might be something that just makes it very difficult.
It sounds scary. It's not as hard as it sounds. And I also know there's a lot of producers in Virginia that do all of the above. They direct ship into a handful of states themselves. They handle the compliance in those states themselves, or they've gone through a third-party compliance website to help with that. And they've partnered with other channels to get their products out. So their direct-to-consumer sales doesn't necessarily need to go through one single website or one social media platform. There's other ways that these producers are getting their products across the country where you don't have to do it 100% yourself.
Yeah. See, it's good to hear that some people are being successful in this space. So, making sure that you do this homework on the front end, really important. And then, of course, there's the operational side of things, right? Just actually making these sales, getting people to come through, make that purchase, collecting these funds, and then dealing with this sort of fulfillment side. So what should a producer be doing on the back end to make sure that their direct-to-consumer sales program is functional and fits into their overall business model?
Yeah, on the operational side, most of your winery, breweries, and distilleries, when they first start, they do not ship. And that's a whole nother avenue where you're going to have to buy packaging and boxes and teach your staff what they need to do. If you get an alcohol shippers account, which you're required to do through either UPS or FedEx, and maybe even DHL, depending on the state, some of them require you to take an online course on how to properly package your alcohol products so it doesn't leak, it doesn't break, there's no other issues. So there's a lot of little steps that you need to make sure that operationally you're ready for when those first orders come in to protect your product. Is your online e-commerce store, do you offer some type of insurance policy where they pay an extra dollar and in case their product breaks? But you need to figure out the packaging and the shipping and logistics and setting up those accounts either with UPS or FedEx. And when it comes to packaging and shipping, an order comes in today, we are, as consumers, we process and we purchase and we want that immediate gratification, because we remember everybody has an Amazon Prime account. We're all used to getting our packages within 2 days or less. So there's nothing worse than sending something via SurePost and it gets there 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Even though you cannot currently ship through the US Postal Service, that might be changing one day soon. Also, your e-commerce platform, it needs to integrate seamlessly with your inventory and fulfillment management systems if you have one. Nothing worse than accepting orders for products that you do not have on hand. That's an easy way to lose customers or lose trust, is when you have to cancel orders. So making sure that it's all ready and all works. And on marketing front, align that your strategies with your direct-to-consumer model, digital marketing to drive sales, and getting those compliance and reporting systems working. Start practicing this as you're growing, so you can be ready for your first few orders. And this time of year, you could be getting 10, 20, 30 orders a day, or more, and making sure that you're ready to fulfill those and handle what comes with that. And lastly, establishing your customer feedback loop. So what that really means is, you probably already do that. If you have a POS system, you might have a loyalty program, you have emails that go out, how did you like your visit? The same thing happens with shipping. How was your shipment? How was the product? Follow up and get answers from your clients. Oh, it was great. It came quickly. It was packaged professionally. And the product tastes great. We'll be buying again. So making sure that all of this is set up so that you're getting the A-OK from your customers, that you're doing it correctly. And if you're not, that's where you can pivot and change what you need to do. But putting all of these things together will help integrate a DTC strategy with your overall sales.
Yeah, that's so it's a lot of work on the back end, right? I like your point about training your staff on all of this, right? This stuff doesn't just happen. Even if you've done all the legwork to make sure you're compliant, that you have all those compliance things, you build out your platform, there's still a human element here. And if you're used to basically having, your wholesaler, your distributor picks up on these days, otherwise it's all in-house. Well, there's a whole different process here, making sure that, you're not shorting your traditional distributor for a small number of online sales. It does happen, and it can be very frustrating, and you don't want to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, I believe is the phrase, and starting to, shortchange anybody. So making sure that all this really works. And something that you mentioned about the sort of expectations, some of this is expectation setting, of just people are used to, Amazon style fulfillment these days. That's maybe not possible. Certainly long haul distance, the cost that it would take for you as a small producer to reach people that quickly, never mind the operational back end of, are you having somebody package 5 orders in a day? Is that worth it to have somebody come in on an off day to pay for something that takes 10 minutes, but you have to do that? Maybe not. So there's outside the alcohol space, I know of I order some coffee from local coffee roasters, and they have very, very clear on their website, we roast these days in order to ensure the freshest product possible. All of our shipments go out the next day after roasting. We will custom roast to you. So if you order by this time on Monday, we will know that we will custom roast for you on Tuesday. It will ship out on Wednesday. We typically have 3 to 5 business days. Okay, you're setting expectations. You don't want to be spending a lot of time fielding phone calls and emails from people saying, where's my product? And you say, 2 days ago, you live, 500 miles away. This stuff doesn't just happen. But, that's something that you could do on the side, just to set consumer expectations, and then making sure that you're living up to what you say you're going to do. That doesn't just happen.
It doesn't take much to make people upset and angry. So having a shipment, you say it's 5-day shipping from here to, from Virginia to California, it shows up in 14 days, it's not your fault, but they leave you a bad review because of it. These are all things that you have to take into consideration. Maybe it's not worth, selling on the other side of the country for now. Let's just stay on the East Coast.
Yeah, unless you find a partner where they take possession
Exactly.
of the product and then that can
And
recommend.
there are a lot. So there's tons of opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. So, right, whatever the channel that somebody uses, if they feel like they've done all of the kind of background work they need to do to be successful on this front, now it comes to actually making these sales and making this program reach the scale that justifies the exercise. So, how can producers push people to buy their products online, both legally, at scale, and ideally without cannibalizing other sales?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. It can be done in, numerous ways. There's a lot of producers that just they do it. They sell all of their stuff through distribution, through their tasting rooms or retail, and through their website. That they don't differentiate. But that's harder to break into the market in some cases when someone can just go down the street. But offer something different maybe to start. So that can be done through offer exclusive products that are only available through your direct to consumer website, or limited releases or special online promotions that order online, and they get something of some sort. And also other channels like in your brewery or through a retailer, you're going to have options to be able to partner and do some cool promotions sometimes. So create some type of unique value proposition also for your online store, without competing directly with your on-premise sales. So it's offering something different in many cases, but not always. You can also, and this is not just the alcoholic products. This is swag. You got hats and shirts and things, and package a bottle of wine and things together, and make that online sale might be more economical than just sending somebody a bottle of wine. Utilize social media, email marketing. If you don't do it yourself, hire someone to do it, because that's kind of where everyone gets their information now. And leveraging partnerships. So influencers, bloggers, other industry experts who you can partner with, or they can promote your stores. You can pay them, or you have some type of agreement where they push your product, you push theirs. This would not only boost your online presence, but you can reach more customers in a more organic way when other people are online talking about what you have to offer, and then you're paying them for hopefully the good review. But that's what you see a lot of these brands are really taking off once these social media influencers get a hold of their product and really start pushing it. And lastly, ensure compliance as well. That you're adhering to all the regulations. So age verification laws, shipping regulations, tax collection, that includes excise tax, sales tax. Putting all of these things together would then effectively drive your online sales. I don't really see a whole lot of negatively impact sales in-house because you're selling direct to consumer, because also when a local business such as a local wine or brewery distillery has their brick and mortar, they have their e-commerce online sales. In many cases, they also have a local delivery option as well. Either they can deliver themselves, because the delivery license is actually, it comes with your licensing now in Virginia, and generally speaking. So you can deliver with a monthly report to Virginia residences. So that could be another option for you, not only just doing your brick and mortar, but having these available in every one of your platforms.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a whole another side that's might be specific to Virginia, but you can determine,
Mhm.
hey, what's the radius that I'm willing to service myself? What is it? What is the sort of cost effective way to do this? Is it, hey, Fridays, if you're within a 20-mile radius, Fridays we run a truck around, we do our fulfillments, and you get to reach people as they're going into the weekend.
Mhm.
At what point
Yep,
does
I've
that?
seen that. Yep.
That's great. I mean, if you have the people who come in for happy hour and you get to reach them afterwards. So that raises a question that I just came to mind. For people who are maybe deciding to do that self-delivery area, or if they're doing kind of things in state or in states where they're otherwise selling through more traditional 3-tier channels, are there any conflicts or areas of friction that you see come up with the distributors that might also service customers in that same area, especially in what are called franchise states, right, where the wholesaler holds a lot of
Yeah.
power?
That's an awesome question. And yes, I can speak specifically in Virginia. Is in Virginia, if you are a in-state brewery or in-state winery and you add your in-state brewers or shipper's license, that allows you to only ship your brand to the consumer. In Virginia, also retailers, so your grocery stores and wine and beer shops can add a shipper's license, which would allow them to ship direct to consumer, but it is a much more difficult process. To ship other people's brands in the state of Virginia, you actually have to have approval from either that brand owner or a written approval from the brand wholesaler that allows you to ship that. So a lot of places might not realize that, you're a wine store in Virginia, you have a shipper's license. Technically, you're supposed to have written authorization from your wholesaler or the brand owner that says that you can direct to consumer ship. The same thing happens with an out of state, say, winery, brewery, or retailer who wants to ship into Virginia wine or beer. The same thing happens if it's a liquor store that wants to get a DTC wine and beer license from, say, Denver, and they want to ship into Virginia. They also have to have written authorization from the brand owner or wholesaler allowing them to do that. And that's now part of the licensing process. Generally, Virginia won't issue that shipper's license until you show them written authorization from at least one product or one brand that you can ship. And then as you grow and you start trying to add new brands, you're supposed to provide another, approval document from every brand owner or wholesaler for a brand that you want to ship. So that's just Virginia specific. So other states could be different as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So certainly be very mindful about your DTC strategy in markets where you might have traditional distribution, whether that's in Virginia or outside Virginia. Just realize that there's going to be some interplay there. If you want to make sure that you're aware of how
I've even seen that in contracts. So, bigger companies who have a contract with a larger, national wholesaler, actually specifically, I've seen it say that they don't want them direct to consumer shipping within the states that they run or certain states. I have seen that. Whether that's legal or not, I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but I have seen it happen.
Yeah, gosh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I can imagine the big distributors might be working with a fairly large brand who might have the capacity to deliver at scale or direct consumer ship at scale. They might have the draw and cut them out of the equation, start reducing the value of that brand to that distributor. Who knows? This is getting outside of the regulatory framework and into contract law, and never mind the sort of softer side of just relational. Hey, if your distributor feels like you're trying to do an end run around them and reach customers without involving them at some scale, well, they may not prioritize you in the channels. They say, hey, you're serving this market on your own. Why are we going to prioritize you? Depends on how much that is, depends on what you're doing. If there are plenty of small producers who are working with distributors only carrying a couple of the brands. Well, you say, maybe we won't sell brands online. We'll do direct to consumer with some of our, more specialty or seasonal offerings.
Exactly.
That's the way to preserve that relationship. So, not a regulatory question, but certainly something to keep in mind. So as we're wrapping up here, I just wanted to see if you had any other considerations or pitfalls that you wanted to highlight for producers that are thinking about selling direct to consumer.
Yeah, I mean, really is do your research before you dive into it, before you need to spend a bunch of money on, software or websites. Do your research first, making sure it's something that you want to do and pick the route you want to go. No one wants to get a cease and desist letter from a state's attorney general or worse. And I've seen this a lot where out of state liquor stores or, other producers have been sending their product to states and they finally get a letter from that state saying that you need to stop doing this. Either one is you need to obtain a license, or two, we don't allow this and there is no licensing for it. So making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to, but then talk to the local industry members, talk to your local other breweries, wineries, distilleries, retailers that are doing this, and learn from them. You can learn from their mistakes, learn what works, what was the hardest part, and even where to buy products from. Where can you buy bulk wine, shipping boxes, where you can buy certain things from. Talk to other industry members, whether it's local, in person, online, Reddit, through Distilled Spirit Association or Brewers Associations. They have all of these ways that you guys can engage each other and get that information really direct from your not only in competition, but the people who are doing the same thing that you want to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting space. It's only going to be more important. I don't think that e-commerce is going anywhere. And
It's only getting bigger.
Yeah, it's a channel that at least it has to be on your radar. So Kevin, as always, really appreciate you sharing your time and expertise with our audience today. It's always informative. So thank you so much for sharing. And
Yeah, you're
thank
very
you all
welcome.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in. Just stay tuned for details about the craft beverage webinars in the new year. But for now, I'll just say, hope everyone has a great holiday season.
I agree. Thanks, Chris and Kevin. And thank everyone for attending today. You will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. We do hope to see you at our next session. If we don't see you before the end of the year, we hope you have wonderful holidays and you have safe and a happy new year. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all.